Are you sure it's you in the mirror? Through the Looking Glass Horror Anthology. The Madman and the Mirror. If anyone thinks schizophrenia is fun, they are dead wrong. The image of a giggling, hooting lunatic doing whatever he wants is just cinematic garbage. In reality, it's fear. A sticky, stinking fear that makes your hands shake, your face turn to stone, and your thoughts tangle, and you lose yourself. Your memory, which just yesterday was helpfully tossing up the info you needed, begins to wander the labyrinths of psychosis. It'll let you remember how some drunk prick of your mother's, who was just as wasted as she was, threw you across the room when you were only 3 years old. But you'll spend forever trying to remember your middle name. You think and you realize, there goes another piece of your identity, gone forever. Schizophrenia is an amputation of the soul, and it's not a damn bit of fun. Some idiot blurted out that a psycho doesn't realize he's a psycho. That's like saying an amputee doesn't realize his leg is gone, and your mind slips away unnoticed day by day. You couldn't catch any sleep at home. At work, they handed you a pitiful pittance instead of a paycheck and blamed you for it to boot. In the entryway, drunk thugs knocked your teeth out just because you didn't have a cigarette. Officials with greasy mugs mock you, making you collect all the paperwork from scratch under some BS pretext. Later, in the break room, they'll brag about how slick they were at putting that loser in his place. Like bricks on your head, problems pile up into smokestacks above you, and then you go on a bender, or you die, or you join a monastery, or you lose your mind. For me, the grain of sand that triggered the landslide was a pile of dog crap. In a week, I'd slept maybe 9 or 10 hours, though you could hardly call that sequence of chaotic nightmares sleep. They bring no relief, only knot your thoughts even tighter. Somehow, pulling myself together, I headed for work. The morning chill and the walk were the only things that gave me any comfort in life. My first step into the hallway ended with a distinct squelch. Neighbors with healthy minds and atrophied consciences didn't bother cleaning up after their dogs. I didn't even have the strength to swear. Barefoot, I went back into the apartment to wash my sneakers. It was, to put it mildly, less than pleasant. That's when, bitter and nearly gagging from disgust, I noticed him in the mirror. He looked like me, which would be logical if he were a reflection. But a reflection doesn't laugh when a bitter man looks at it without a shadow of a smile. But this scum was grinning ear to ear and pointing a finger at me. That's how lowlifes watch that kid fuck a pie in that one movie. Snickering and pointing. Except I wasn't violating any pies, and this wasn't a movie. And there it is, I said, with a strange sense of relief. I've finally lost it. The double's mouth in the mirror moved, but not at all in sync with my words. He looked away entirely and addressed someone else. Straining, I heard it, as if through a wall. Get over here. Looks like they added a recognition feature to the show. Drop your shit, they're showing something cool. I didn't want to be the cool thing they're showing. It was bad enough that everyone around me bullied me, but now my own mental twists were treating me like a clown. That was the last straw. After pulling on my still wet sneakers, I trudged off to work, and tonight, I promised myself, I'd smash that mirror to dust. But it turned out to be worse. The creep was spying on me through any reflective surface, including shop windows and even passers-by's glasses. By evening, he wasn't alone anymore. He was in the company of idiots who looked like people I knew, but with the mannerisms of either half-wits or middle schoolers at a monkey cage. With the scraps of my sanity, I tried to process the situation. I could have surrendered myself into the tender hands of psychiatrists, but that means losing all civil rights and freedoms. Anyone who claims otherwise either doesn't know what they're talking about or is on the side of the doctors and the relatives who get a disenfranchised slave to look after. I had just enough fear left not to lunge at every reflection, because that would lead to option 1 anyway. Lock myself in a windowless room? I'm not in a Hollywood blockbuster, and even a madman's gotta eat every day. Become a hobo? No thanks. This isn't Alabama. It's the subarctic. It's cold as hell here even in the summer. In one thing, books and movies about psychos don't lie. When you're backed into a corner, your brain starts looking for a way out, no matter how insane it might be. Cunning, that's what allowed weak humans to exterminate almost everything that tried to eat them. And I started listening. listening to what those degenerates were talking about. Their world was similar to ours. People loved to eat, sleep, and screw. But it was different. Oh, how different it was. There were no wars, no diseases, no poverty or cruelty in that world. And through the mirrors, they watched alternative universes. Ours was the epicenter of nightmare. They didn't perceive it as reality, no more than we perceive zombie apocalypse movies. Our world was their hell, where the bad boys go after they die. A plan was already taking shape. I even allowed myself a smile. The director saw that smile and sent me home to rest for a couple of days. Must have been one hell of a grin. Now I needed to head to a funeral parlor. The ancient tradition of covering mirrors in the house of the last host was solved more easily there. They simply didn't have any. So I quietly bought everything I needed. Taking the back alleys, there are no storefronts there, and the windows are dirty and grimy. I made it home. The exhausting insomnia and the mental strain of the last few days were taking their toll. I was swaying from fatigue. But I had a plan of action, and that gave me strength. Mundane chores: mop the floors, peel potatoes, cook dinner. Occasionally I glanced into reflections and smiled inside, while keeping a grim indifference on my face. Just as I'd calculated, my otherworldly friends were leaving the boring show. I was left one-on-one with the fan of watching life in hell. Now I couldn't hesitate. God forbid he decides to take off to handle his own business too. Walking into the bathroom, I locked eyes with the mirror. My reflection flinched. Apparently the bloodshot eyes, sunken cheeks, and mess of a hairstyle were quite a sight. "You want to see something interesting?" I asked. The oaf swallowed hard. I guess their subjects rarely noticed they were being watched. He probably should have consulted with a mirror operator, or whatever they call them, but he was likely just some local script kiddie, young and stupid. Exactly what I needed. "Well, do you?" I repeated the question. "I do," he answered timidly. "Watch this," I said, then added sternly, "but keep it to yourself. If anyone else comes in, I'm stopping." He clicked a button on a remote, likely locking the door, and stared at me. Of course, a savage cannibal performing a private dance for the White Sahib. I wondered if he'd hit record or not. Whatever. I couldn't afford to get distracted. In the room, right on the linoleum, I laid out a basic pentagram using black ribbons and candles bought at the funeral parlor. I reinforced it with 3 types of symbols: runes, ancient Chinese characters, and cuneiform. Seems my youth spent dabbling in the occult didn't go to waste. It turned out almost perfect. The clown watched me like a kid watching a magician, not even attempting to make a basic warding sign. Using 2 mirrors placed opposite each other, I created a transition tunnel, an infinite reflection. Now, only a tiny detail remained. I just prayed he wouldn't suspect anything. I was sweating from the tension, but the observer was all ears, practically ready to clap his hands. I beckoned him with a finger. He hesitated for a second, then leaned forward. Grabbing him by the shirt, I yanked him into our world. The mirror creaked, but held. One more lunge and I was on the other side. I looked around. A spacious room with floor-to-ceiling French windows, light rattan furniture, and airy white curtains. This room alone was 3 times the size of my shack. Looks like I made the right call. Turning around, I saw my observer in the mirror. He was crawling on the floor, tangling himself in the black mourning ribbons, trying to process what had just happened. I gave him a friendly wave, smiled, and shattered the mirror with my fist. Now I won't be the one smashing every mirror in sight. I won't be the one thrashing in hysterics, strapped to a bed in a psych ward. And I certainly won't be the one telling wild stories about how I'm not from this world and don't belong here. Let my observer enjoy a full immersion into the hellish reality. As for me, in a photo next to the broken mirror, my double stood squeezing a beautiful girl. I think that's exactly where I'll start getting to know this new world. Hello from the looking glass. I can't say exactly when it all started. Probably right after I was born, because for as long as I can remember, my life was pure hell. Mirrors, they were my worst nightmare. Sometimes I felt this uncontrollable urge to go to them, no matter where I was or what I was doing. As a kid, I could drop an exciting game just to start smearing my mom's lipstick on my lips in front of the big hallway mirror. I'd get chewed out for it later, obviously, but damn it, I didn't even want to do it. It was like something else was forcing me, some alien will. Now I'm 20, and I'm still just as hooked on mirrors. Nothing's changed. Well, except for one tiny little detail. If it used to scare me, now it just pisses me off. I hate my reflection, its stupid facial expressions, its idiotic movements that I'm forced to repeat over and over. And God, her makeup. I'd never paint that on myself in my right mind. You make me sick. You hear me, you bitch? Sick. Only in the dead of night did a brief peace settle in. I noticed that then, the mirrors seemed to lose their grip on me, and I could live my own life for a bit, without feeling that minute-by-minute urge to grab a compact and powder my nose. I even changed my schedule, started staying up at night. No, during the day I couldn't get any sleep. Something would wake me up and drag me to that cursed mirror, and there she'd be, fresh as a daisy, the little brat, like she'd had a perfect night's sleep. Yeah, it was hell. I don't know how much longer I could have held on, but one day, everything changed. A fluke. A stupid, lucky fluke for me. Late one evening, she was standing in the bathroom in front of the mirror, brushing her hair, and I was mindlessly mimicking her every move. Suddenly, the light bulb flickered and went out. The light spilling in from the hallway was enough to make out silhouettes, but not enough to hold me back. I felt that nothing was binding me anymore. I could control my own body. Shocked by the discovery, I raised my hand and waved it in front of my face, and then I saw her looking at me from the other side in pure terror. I smirked at her, and she chickened out and bolted, but it was already too late. The next morning, she approached the mirror again. Of course, gotta get all dolled up, right? She approached warily, though. At first, I played along, savoring the fact that she was no longer my master. I turned around, fixed my hair, drew those horrible winged eyeliner lines. And when we were almost done, I reached out and touched the mirror. She couldn't resist me. As if hypnotized, she touched my cold glass fingers with her hand and blinked in confusion when the reflection vanished. I was here, behind her. Quickly, before she could snap out of it, I shoved her in the back and felt an electric charge run through my fingers. They turned warm and alive. I glanced in the mirror, smiled at my shocked reflection, and walked out of the room. You know, kiddos, I like your world much better than mine. Over there, on my side, everything seemed dull, as if covered in a layer of dust or translucent paper. But here, everything is bright and very real. And I'm real. No, my friends, said I've changed. I fed them some line about deciding to get my act together and reading smart books instead of hitting the clubs. But inside, I was gloating because I always knew I was better than her and more deserving of this world and this life. And here's the thing, kiddos. There are a lot of us here. I know this because we can spot our own kind at a glance. We even call ourselves the Order of the Looking Glass and hold meetings sometimes. Ha, I'm lying, of course. We don't hold anything, and we call ourselves people, just like you. And the fact that our hearts are on the right side, who's gonna know? Random doctors. Don't make me laugh. We only go to vetted physicians who suffer from the same rare anomaly. The girl in line, a random passenger, your younger sister. Are you sure it's not me? We are among you, and our numbers are growing. By the way, remember that stupid scare tactic where you have to go into the bathroom, stand in the dark in front of a mirror, and light a match? One of ours came up with that. Hilarious, right? The day that joke went viral on the internet was a holiday for hundreds who broke through into the real world, and the beginning of life sentences for your kind. The funniest part is, it still works. We like it here, we like living your lives, and we aren't going back. Because we sacredly observe our main commandment: never look in a mirror in the dark. Personally, I've removed all mirrors from my bedroom and moved the bathroom mirror inside the cabinet. To be honest, I've gotten rid of every glossy and polished object in the room, anything capable of reflecting. In the evenings, I pull the curtains tight, cover the TV screen with a blanket, and clear the shiny discs off the table. Damn, I even flip my phone face down just so I don't catch a glimpse by accident. Because I know for a fact, those living on the other side only get a shot at a real life in the dark, and if they pull it off, nothing will stop them. You can be sure of that. In the light of day, when I'm safe, I walk up to the mirror and see the hatred in my reflection's eyes, the very same hatred I once felt myself. Well, babe, you've got every right. Anyway, gotta run. The mirror demon. When it happened for the first time, I was 5 years old. I remember sitting on the floor in a sun-drenched living room, rolling a wooden toy train and humming something to myself. But when I looked up at the mirror hanging on the wall, I saw another boy being murdered in there. The whole house came running at the sound of my screams. Everyone tried to calm me down, but I just sobbed and pointed at the mirror, babbling incoherently. There, in a completely different room, nothing like our living room, lay a small, fair-haired boy in a pool of blood. Just a couple of minutes ago, while he was carelessly drawing, a man who had stepped out of the wall struck him with a massive sword. My parents didn't understand what was going on. They didn't see what I saw. Still, they tried to help. They tossed the mirror and started locking the living room door. But the terror stayed with me. I was deathly afraid of mirrors. I'd scream and go into hysterics at the mere sight of my reflection. One day, the doctors came to the house, and soon I was taken away for a full 6 months. I returned quiet and withdrawn, but I stopped shrinking away from mirrors. Everyone thought I was cured, but I had simply realized that there was no point in talking about these things. The second time it happened was when I was in 5th grade. I walked into the school restroom and came flying back out, gasping for air. My classmates asked why I was so pale, why I was shaking and wringing my hands. But what could I say? That in the restroom mirror, I saw the death of a girl my age, a girl in a white dress killed by the same man. A man who seemed woven from darkness, carrying a long sword from which blood dripped thick and heavy. No way. Better to keep quiet. I didn't want to end up back there again. The third and fourth times happened while I was still in school. Once, it was in a dressing room where I was preparing for a performance. In the mirror, a short, balding man in round glasses was dying. He tried to resist, but the nightmare man lifted him with one hand and snapped his thin neck like a straw. Then he hacked the body to pieces with his sword, as if in retaliation for a ruined script. When I performed, the bow trembled in my freezing fingers. But the music, surprisingly, remained steady and perfect, as if the cello were absorbing all my fear and weeping for the both of us. Then it happened at home, in that same living room, while I was rummaging through the bookcase for something to distract me from my exam prep. But when I slid the glass door shut, a young woman screamed in the reflection, and the dark silhouette behind her back swung his sword. I shuddered and went to my room, where I spent the rest of the evening and part of the night staring blankly at the open pages of a textbook. I was shaking with chills, and at dinner, I prayed my parents wouldn't notice. Fortunately, they figured it was just nerves before the exam. It happened more after that, but I stopped counting and didn't memorize the faces of the victims. It could happen anywhere. In a shop while trying on jeans, in a taxi's rearview mirror, in the bathroom. I began to get used to it. I'd even stand and watch for a while if the setting allowed. My fingers would go cold, my head would spin, and the notes of a strange, haunting music would start playing in my mind, the music for which many called me a genius. Honestly, I'd give up this gift in a heartbeat if I could. My terror, that strange man. I examined him in every detail. He was massive, muscles, or something else, something repulsive and alive, rippled under his black, oily skin. He had no face. Instead, there was a formless mass that shimmered like liquid bitumen and shifted. It served as his clothing, too, oozing onto the ground and stretching in sticky threads from the walls he stepped out of to reach his next victim. The sword he used to kill seemed to suck in all the light around it. I suppose that's what demons look like when they cross into our world, or something else entirely, but just as malevolent. Yes, I was terrified of him. And in my house, there were no windows for this nightmare. My friends were puzzled. Girls got angry and indignant when I demanded they didn't even pull out a pocket mirror. Only one stayed with me forever, she who had learned to apply makeup in front of a webcam, and I told her everything. A monster? In the mirrors? Olga raised her eyebrows and looked at me in surprise. So that's the price of your gift. And here I was thinking, but don't worry. She reached out and pressed her warm cheek against my once again freezing fingers. Demons can be driven away with love. He'll see us and run. I gave her a weak smile in response. Something inside me knew that wasn't true. A year later, I married Olga. And a year after that, it happened. I was sitting in my study, writing something in my journal, when a boundless terror suddenly gripped me. It dug into my chest with cold claws, paralyzing me and seizing my throat, not even letting me groan in despair as my worst childhood nightmare began to step out of the wall. He emerged first as dark droplets, shining oilily and relentlessly coalescing into one. A head wove itself from them, and the monster turned it from side to side as if stretching. He tore one arm free from the wall's captivity, then the other. Threads trailed behind them, which he impatiently snapped. He pushed off and burst forth, nearly falling into the room, his feet hitting the floor with a wet thud as he leaned on his terrible sword. Again, he turned his head and stared at me, stared without eyes, savaging the thought of my death, relishing my helplessness and despair. I managed a groan, low and thin, like the mewling of a kitten cornered by a hungry terrier. How did that man in the glasses manage to resist him back then? Was it even within human power? "Get away from him!" a voice rang out, and the creature snapped its faceless head up, looking at the one who dared to interfere. At my Olga. She stood in the doorway of the study, dressed in a thin bathrobe. She looked at the monster without fear, as if she were taming an angry dog. And her whole body glowed like an angel's, and this radiance streamed out, making the air tremble and vibrate around us. In that vibration, I heard music. Music with so much warmth and protection in it that I was finally able to take a breath. The monster didn't like this music. His fluid body, which had only just taken on human features, began to shift and churn again. "Get out," Olga commanded, and the radiance consumed her entirely, erasing the last of her human traits. The music thundered with new power. My wife was that music. The demon jerked and swung his sword as if trying to hack apart the thing causing him suffering. He radiated a hatred and fury so intense it scorched my hair and lashes. It became hard to breathe again. Unable to resist, the monster shriveled in pain and began to dissolve across the floor. His body tried to take on new forms, powerlessly clutching at the sword lying on the floor. But the radiance and the music were stronger, and at the very moment I began to believe in victory, the nearly formless demon lunged into the air and bolted toward me. So fast. And just as he was closing in, a burst of light, which was my wife, struck him. I heard a two-toned scream that rang not just in my ears but through my entire body. Then everything vanished in a brilliant flash. I lost consciousness. When I woke up, there wasn't a soul nearby. The demon stopped appearing to me in mirrors and, it seems, isn't killing anyone anymore. A sorceress I found to explain what happened said the monster had returned to where he came from, and that made me very happy. My beloved is no longer by my side. All of Olya's things vanished from my house, as did the wedding ring from my finger. Her phone number doesn't exist, and some guy lives in her parents' apartment instead of them. My friends don't remember our wedding, and the pages in my journal where I wrote about her have gone blank. The only thing that proves my love ever existed is my music book. Many of my compositions are dedicated to Olga, and she didn't destroy them when she left. And that's only right, because those pieces should be dedicated to her, to my muse.